chapter 1145. The anime is coming back in 2 days and it's gonna be so good. Although, if I'm being completely honest, I do think some people are getting their hopes up too much because it's still coming back as a weekly show, so even though there is that extra 6-month buffer, the pacing is more likely not going to be drastically different from what it was before, and it's not suddenly gonna have the look of a seasonal anime in terms of consistency. But that being said, the trailer and the previews look ridiculously good, so I do have full trust that all of the remaining major moments of the Egghead arc, of which there are many, very many, are gonna be done justice by the anime staff. Also, the spin-off series One Piece in Love has been released, and at this moment now, I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard people have been very pleasantly surprised by how good it actually looks. And finally, it was April Fool's Day on Tuesday, so that means the whole build-up for this chapter was that much more complicated, especially given the actual contents of this chapter, because the stuff that's usually used to trick people isn't that far off what this chapter really gives us. What's revealed is that big. Comparing what's usually used as an April Fool's joke and what the chapter gives us, they're not that far apart. Opening with both a cover story page and color spread, the cover story shows Ulti hugging page 1 now that they have been liberated, freed, and I've spoken to death what I think will happen. They'll join Yamato on this journey, although since Tama is there, we know Tama didn't have the greatest time with Ulti during Wano. There was the whole deal with her and Nami and even Big Mom. I wonder if all of that which happened during the raid is going to be touched upon here. And the color spread drawn by one of the anime staff, Midori Matsuda, and it depicts the Straw Hats watching the new anime episode, so this is in anticipation for the return of the anime. It's gonna be a party, really. It's gonna be so great, and I don't even have to stay awake until 3 AM anymore to watch it because the time slots changed. We're gonna be back with peak every week. To the chapter now. The chapter starts with Zoro, Sanji and Goldberg, who are hunting for meat to give to Loki, when they come across a huge Groggysaurus, it's called, and it attacks them. Goldberg uses his shield, which breaks the creature's teeth, and the other two use a combo attack to bring it down. Sanji launches Zoro, who decapitates it. I'm a big fan of the actual decapitation panel, by the way it runs down the page. It works extra well with this kind of dinosaur, a sauropod, my favorite kind of dinosaur, so it's great to see it here, even if it is getting beheaded, but I'll take any sauropod representation in media. And it's absolutely massive, by the way. Look at Goldberg here. He's like 1/5 the size of only its head, so this thing could easily be 500 meters tall or something, and I'm not exaggerating. The Little Garden vibes are very strong right now, and I would not be opposed to another hunting contest between the two of them. Essentially a dick measuring contest. Same thing with the bounties, it's a dick measuring contest. And we finally get an answer to why Goldberg's shield has a face and can talk. Its name is Nash. And if we continue with that idea of giants being named after wrestlers or One Piece characters in general, I'm saying the shield is named after Kevin Nash, and it's a homie that came to life during battle when his father fought against Big Mom during the winter solstice 63 years ago. And homies are obviously created, they are brought to life using part of a soul, so back then it was Mother Carmel who had the soul fruit, so it would have been thanks to her that this happened. And if you notice, Nash, the shield, grows bigger to block the strike. I assume he got that ability when he was given a soul. Like how Zeus as a sentient thundercloud could use lightning, Nash can change his size to better protect as a shield. And speaking of Zeus, Nash talks about him as if he's some kind of legend, and he says Zeus-san like he's being respectful. Zeus was created by a kid, Charlotte Linlin. Maybe her exploits as she grew up reached elbaph, and Zeus, being one of her first homies, gained some notoriety or something that gave him status amongst the homies, the homie community. But to be fair, from Nash's perspective, he is the only, or at least one of the only homies who exist that aren't under Big Mom, who don't live in Totoland, so to him, I guess it makes sense that he thinks Zeus is some great war hero or something amongst the homie community. Loki does tell them about the Holy Knights and the whole situation there, and Hiruden does ask if there's a grudge between them from the time Loki spent out at sea, although Loki says it isn't, and says if he was able to go far enough to meet them, then he would have been king of the world by now. And it was pretty clear from his first confrontation with Gunko and Shamrock that that was his first time interacting with any of them. Luffy gives him some meat to speed up his recovery, and you know how much that means if Luffy is giving meat to someone else. It's that, alongside with Luffy getting your name right, that shows he trusts you. I guess he has a certain affinity towards you, and it does help a bit, but it's not a full recovery. It's like milk healing bones. It's just, these are the rules of this world. I mean, we get Loki force feeding him. He needs to understand that. Forget about Loki being injured and all. Not everyone is as voracious as he is when it comes to meat. He even spills boiling soup on the poor guy. Luffy has good intentions, but right now I feel like he should leave it to the professionals, the cook and the doctor. Although right now the doctor in question, Gerd, is giving the thumbs up because everyone still hates Loki at this point in time. The truth hasn't been revealed yet. And I do imagine that it wasn't only Hyrudian he bullied, he probably bullied all the other kids as well. But he still doesn't say anything about Shanks' whereabouts. So that links back to the choice he gave to Luffy when he first went into the underworld before anyone had even arrived in the village, at the time when the others were still sailing to the island or running away from Road and hiding from Gerd and Goldberg. And that choice Loki gave was to free him and he'll tell Luffy where Shanks is. And I am on his side here with him not telling Luffy just yet, because he says he hasn't been freed yet. The chains were reattached after all of the bluffs he was throwing about after he fell, or before he fell unconscious / knocked unconscious by Luffy. And yes, it was his fault entirely that he had to get chained up again because of what he did first thing after getting unchained. But to be fair to him, that does not change the terms of the agreement. It's still a mystery as to how he would even know where Shanks is, about Shanks' current location. I think it may have something to do with him having a secret group of supporters on the island who feed him information, and there is a certain someone who he talks to on a transponder snail, Mosa, who we know has essentially been his only friend since his imprisonment aside from the underworld beasts. And she, I think Mosa is a girl by the way, so I'm just gonna move forward with that assumption. She may have overheard something the last time Shanks was here, which was very recently when he was visiting Gabon and took out Kid. So I do think Loki really does know Shanks' location. I don't think it's another bluff. And he mentions how he understands Luffy's passion regarding Shanks because he once had such admiration for someone as well. And we get another brief flashback which is massive because it reveals that Loki once encountered the one guy so dangerous and infamous that his existence had to be wiped off the face of this planet, Rox D. Xebec. And this is the thing I was talking about, that if someone told you Rox was mentioned or appeared in this chapter, you'd think it was an April Fool's joke. And in all the chaos that has been elbaph so far, or even including the second half of the egghead arc as well in that, he completely slipped my mind. Someone so intriguing who's somehow become even more mysterious than Emu themselves. Someone of such magnitude, and we are now getting some more stuff on Rox D. Xebec. Xebec, I think is how the anime officially pronounces it, but Xebec is just way easier to say. He showed up, well, obscured and silhouetted still, which is something because the last time he appeared he wasn't even on the page. All we were given was a speech bubble, and we find out that Loki tried to join his crew. Kid Loki tried to join the Rox pirates. There's no way anyone had thought before this that Rox had any connection to Loki, or vice versa. That King of the World line from Loki makes a lot more sense now, given who we're talking about. There has been nothing connecting them until now. Well, that is also because of the fact we're only now getting to know Loki, but still, what kind of a scenario was this for these two characters to come into contact with each other? Well, actually, judging from the size of the table and the bottle, they are on Elbaph, so the Rox pirates visited Elbaph for something. Rox said he didn't come here to meet a kid like Loki, so he came here to meet someone. Could it have been Harald? Everyone thought he had connections to the world government, but instead, what if the King of the Giants had some kind of connection to the Rox pirates? This is getting more and more insane. This flashback has the potential to be completely ridiculous, and I can't think of anyone else who he would want to meet on the island. Big Mom had already left by that point. Gabon was still on the Roger pirates. King Harald is the only guy I can think of. The God Valley incident was 38 years ago, so let's say at the absolute maximum this happened just before then, so 38 years ago. Loki would have been 25 years old, so only 5 years older than Colin is now. So he would have been a kid, or maybe he had hit puberty or something, and this is when he hit his rebellious phase or something. No, I'm joking. And as expected, Rox outright rejected him, and Loki, maybe this incident did start his rebellious phase because this kid, this idiot kid, decided to challenge Rox to a fight, which is kind of funny to picture because Loki would probably tower over Rox. And again, as expected, he got put in the dirt. Rox used a real sword to fight a kid, a sword that's now stuck in Kid Loki's body. He wasn't playing around. I'm trying to mirror this with Shanks and Luffy. Luffy stabbed himself under the eye to prove himself, while Loki got stabbed in an effort to prove himself. Loki, we know he is the shit, you know, he is the real deal in the present day, but him challenging possibly, arguably the strongest pirate ever to a fight, no matter what the outcome was, that is the makings of a conqueror. If anything was to convince you that Loki has conqueror's haki, it would be this moment right here. So I gave that hypothetical timeline, which gave like the absolute limit for how recently this interaction could have taken place. But when could it have happened actually? Because it's hard to put it into context with the flashback from a couple chapters ago, because Hyruden's 18 years older than Loki, but because of how big Loki is, his ancient giant genetics, it's a lot harder to tell how old Hyruden is. Like, for all we know, Hyruden here could be in his 30s and Loki could be like 15. We just can't tell. So the interaction with Rox could have happened before or after this scene with Harald. Another interesting thing would be, was Big Mom on the crew when this happened? Because we know he definitely met Big Mom later on with the whole Lola situation. So maybe Big Mom was so confident in marrying Lola off to Loki because they had already met, and being a member of the Rox Pirates, she probably felt she had a bit of sway with him. And another thing with that is Loki currently wants to destroy Elbaph, and Loki should know about what Big Mom did herself when she was a kid on the island. So what if that was another thing that kind of gave Loki a good impression of Big Mom? And to spice things up a bit, there's the theory going round that I am subscribed to, that King Harald had a third son who we would come to know as Kaido, and there is definitely a way that this Kaido theory can still work depending on the timeline here. And Kaido only joined the Rox Pirates himself 6 years before the God Valley incident, so it's very likely Loki met Rox first before Kaido joined the crew. The only difference between the two of them being Loki asked to join the Rox Pirates and was rejected, while Kaido was sought out by Rox and was invited to join. Fair warning for the future, I'm gonna cling to this Kaido Harald theory until it can be proven 100% to be impossible, so essentially until the Loki Harald flashback at the bare minimum, because that would probably start all the way back with Hyruden's birth, I would think, because there's everything to cover back then with his own mother. And also, would Loki know about God Valley, or is he in the dark on it as well? Being a Rox fanboy and everything, would there have been any way for him to find out? Because elbaf isn't world government affiliated, so any mass wipe of information would have had no effect on them because it's an independent nation, so I would think he most likely does know. We've also got Gabon who was there and Somers who was potentially there, so that could also be a possible connecting thread. And back in the present, Loki really did look up to Rox, like Luffy looking up to Shanks, except Rox didn't give Loki a hat, he gave him a beating. And yet even with that, it doesn't paint Rox to be a bad guy in my opinion. Following the Kuma flashback where we saw Whitebeard lecturing him about running off into battle and such, I think it's clear Rox being an evil leader of this ultimate force of chaos is kind of world government propaganda. Not the ultimate force of chaos part, because that's probably a very accurate description of the Rox Pirates, but the him being an evil guy thing. And yes, even with him using a real sword to stab Kid Loki, who he didn't pull any punches against, I don't think he's just a straight up bad guy like Loki himself. Neither of them are just straight up evil, even though they've definitely done bad things. And we see Whitebeard again. A Whitebeard appearance is always appreciated, and we see him scolding Rox as well. This is what I mean, I feel like in some sense he's going to be like Luffy in the way, I guess, that he did whatever he wanted, but you know, he also had no problem getting his hands dirty. And it is always Whitebeard we see whenever we hear about this guy. Obviously his name was mentioned alongside Rox when Rox was first revealed. He was the one who went to recruit Kaido when Rox said he wanted to see him. He was also up front in that double page spread in the God Valley incident, and now this. I wouldn't say that the Rox Pirates had a definitive vice captain because of all the massive personalities who were barely following the actual captain, but it seems like if there was one, it was Whitebeard. But on the same note, Rox telling Whitebeard, the Whitebeard, to shut up is crazy. Who else could get away with that? Garp and Roger? Garp seems like the kind of guy who would have told Whitebeard to shut up back in the day. Roger, not so much. I feel like there was too much mutual respect there. Loki says he was born in the wrong era because he wanted to grow up as a member of that crew, which again reminds me of Shanks, who grew up as a member of the Roger Pirates, but the whole thing about him being born in the wrong era reminds me of Roger when he said he'd wished he'd lived during Joyboy's time. Back to the fighting in the Sun World, where the giant Night Warrior pirates are fighting the nightmares, and Gaban jumps in to cut the Loki nightmare in half, and he says that if the kids knew the real monsters that their nightmares have depicted, then this manifestation would be way stronger. So I feel like that answers my question from a few chapters ago about what determines the strength of these monsters. It's not Killingham who directly controls that himself when he brings them to life, but instead it's based on the child's perception of how strong they view their nightmare to be. So that's a good way of keeping the ability in check as well, so Killingham doesn't have direct control over every little aspect of these things. And Gaban also senses the three holy knights again, just like back in the castle, saying they couldn't hide their presence from him, and he's the only one who's been able to sense them, and he's done it twice now, so I feel like this is intentional, and it's a very strong observation hockey feat for him. And he does make another interesting point that if Elbaf isn't safe, then what does that say for the rest of the world if the country touted as the strongest is having issues and difficulties like this? Saul has defeated the Fenrir nightmare, but that has kind of put him between a rock and a hard place, because he can't touch the kids or else he and they will get hurt, and he can't do anything to help out with the fire either. The fire squadron is still trying their best, and I commend them for that, but there's no way that on their own they would have been able to put the fire out. It's obviously understandable that such a unit exists to be able to put out the fires. It's Elbaf's greatest weakness, or one of, like Ripley said, but once a fire starts, it's gonna spread stupidly fast. I mean, the whole country is a tree, and we've got proof that they can't do much, because remember Haugen village, they had to cut off the entire branch to stop the spread. Meanwhile, Gunko and Summers are out here basically competing over who can say the most sadistic thing, although Gunko mentioning that the kids will be nothing but bones, I'm pretty sure that's a line from Big Sake, and Bones Brook is already nothing but bones. What if Gunko listens to Big Sake like on the sly? It's the quintessential pirate song, so she can't have anyone finding out, but there is the theory out there that she is a traitor, or she is working under the Revolutionary Army undercover, so it's actually not that far-fetched. And there's a master of fishman karate, Jinbei, who's just shown up with a new technique who puts the fire out using the clouds, and it's just in time as well, because the kids were well on their way to sleepwalking straight into those flames. Colin and the Straw Hats, who are with him, or should I say the Colin pirates, arrive at the beach where they join the action alongside Chopper and Robin, so it looks like slowly but surely the crew, or at least the crew in the Sun World, will be forced back together with all the fighting going on. And once the Storm Thunder nightmare is dealt with, this will be probably the location where Ripley and Frankie come down to, since this is also the place by the school where the two of them started the tour before even the party began. It's nice to see Chopper and Robin noticing that it is Jinbei who's put out the fire, and also this panel here is really cute. And it's a nice touch to have Colin say that even though the other kids hate him, he still sees them as his friends, and it's also great to see Nami stepping up. I would like to see her strike one of the Holy Knights with a lightning bolt the same way she did to Ulti and Wano after she smacked Tama. And then we got Usopp, who is Usopp. I like the idea that he goes up against Killingham, because it would be really cool to see how his dreams and nightmares manifest, you know, because you could say his dream of becoming a brave warrior of the sea is also his greatest nightmare, or not achieving it is his greatest nightmare. So that's a matchup that I want to see. And the chapter ends with Gunko showing up on the Sval ship that is carrying the Column Pirates, and part of the Column Pirates is the man who wrote the song New World that she was vibing to last chapter. Gunko is about to meet her hero, Soul King Brook. So already we have a way of dealing with her, because Brook is present. He just needs to offer a live performance or something, give her an autograph to distract her, make her fangirl so she loses focus. But this is another step closer to Colin being caught in her and the other Holy Knight's abilities. So it seems like this first conflict of the arc is gonna come to a head and culminate here near the school. But obviously the big takeaway is Loki's connection to rocks and what that's gonna lead to. Maybe it's in this arc where we learn the truth about him and how he and his ambition of being the king of the world, a position that we know is currently occupied and was occupied back when he was around, how he and that goal really fits into the wider narrative of the story.